Good to see you all here tonight. Glad to be taking part in another study from Ecclesiastes with you tonight. We're in Ecclesiastes chapter 3. Which contains some words that are very familiar to us, if for no other reason. Even if you're not much of a Bible reader, you may have heard some of these if you listen to 60s music. I'll try not to sing that tonight. Ecclesiastes chapter 3. And I'll just read... I'll read down through verse 15. For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to pluck up what is planted. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to break down, and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. What gain has the worker from his toil? I've seen the business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. He has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, He has put eternity in a man's heart, yet so that he cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. I perceive that there is nothing better for them than to be joyful and to do good as long as they live. Also, that everyone should eat and drink and take pleasure in all his toil. This is God's gift to man. I perceive that whatever God does endures forever. Nothing can be added to it, nor anything taken from it. God has done it, so that people will fear before Him. That which is already has been, that which is to be already has been, and God seeks what has been driven away. So you may have recognized some of those words. You may have recognized those seasons, those times, those repetitive cycles. You know, one of the things that as the preacher Solomon is making observations about life, he makes the observation that there are just cycles of things. Times that change. Life is filled with change. And that in the phrasing as it begins, there is a time for every matter under heaven. What does that phrase under heaven kind of give you an idea of or sense of? It's on earth, but to me it's a different sense than the under the sun. There's a sense of where God dwells. This is all the things that take place, all these cycles of life, and all these different circumstances in which we find ourselves. They're built into the design. That's just the way life works. And there are fleeting times of one thing and then another. I don't plan to go through this list. It's 14 different things, 14 different couplets that are that make up this list of the seasons of life. And certainly there would be wisdom if we were to take these and examine them and consider those different times and what's being described here. And certainly if we were to meditate on those things and reflect on our own experiences, we would be able to identify with just these times. We would know, yes, I've been in a time of planning and a time of taking up what's planned. And I've been in a time of casting away stones. And I've been in a time of gathering together for a purpose. But there are some observations that I want to make about the collective of all of these different times, all these different cycles of life. And I've got a few of those before we move on past this section. There's something comforting to me about the phrasing of this passage. I find that it's somewhat comforting to know that others, and namely Solomon, has observed these things and all these different circumstances of life. Other people have experienced those too. Other people have been in our shoes when we have been in this situation or that situation. Others have gone through it and they've come out of those experiences alive. Well, except for the death thing, the dying thing. We don't come out of that, at least in terms of this life, but we can benefit from the lessons that others have gained as they've experienced the cycles of life. There's comfort in that. And as I mentioned, this is all stuff that takes place under heaven, under the auspices of the Creator. God knows what we go through. This is the Word that comes through His Spirit. God understands we have ups and downs in life. We have times in which we're joyful and times in which we mourn. God knows that. Jesus knows that. One of the things that I love about this fundamental truth that the Word became flesh and dwelt among us is that He experienced all those cycles of life with us. He shared in our perspective of life. And even though He writes about it and speaks about it and tells us about it here, He Himself participated in it. And it's comforting to know that God knows these seasons. Another thing about these that's comforting to me is it's a reminder that nothing is all that enduring, nothing lasts forever. And that's a good thing to be reminded of when things are going bad, right? You all have heard there's that old story that a king put a question to a wise man. He said, I need you to give me a phrase that would be suitable, appropriate, apt, applicable in every situation, in every circumstance. And what was the response of the wise man? This too shall pass. No matter where you are in life, no matter what's taking place in your life, it is a season. It is a time. It will pass. That's a positive and encouraging thing when we're experiencing pain, when we're experiencing loss,